What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at how we can build an onboarding flow for our app. So if you're not familiar, a lot of times when you open up an app for the first time, you'll get some pretty nifty onboarding flow that showcases features or maybe asks for like user permissions. But it's pretty essential in most apps these days. So if we just take a look at what we're going to be making, once we open our app, we get this nice little flow. We can hit the continue button and keep going through. We can also scroll horizontally and we're going to snap to the pages. So we've got a title, an image, a button, and of course once we get to the last screen, we hit this, we dismiss it. And if I close up this app and reopen it, you'll see that we don't get this onboarding flow again. So we're going to be building this. With that being said, make sure you smash that like button down below and let's get started. So as always, we're going to get started with Xcode and create a new project. Make sure you select a single view application. Let's have Swift selected here and let's call this Onboarding. Save it on your desktop or wherever. Expand this window and let's get into it. So the first thing that we need to do is add our images that we're going to show on our actual onboarding flow. So we're going to go into our XE assets and create 2 images in here, rather 3. So I like to call them welcome underscore a number and obviously put them in order. Let's do 2, 3, and then I've already dragged out images from Google Images for this demo, so let's put them in. So first we're going to show a Apple logo, which will be our first image. The next one will be this pin, this map pin, and then we're going to throw up a check mark to the user. So the next thing we want to do is create a view controller that's going to actually house our welcome flow. So let's right click this, new file, CocoaTouch class, and we'll call this WelcomeViewController. Make sure Swift is selected. From here, we want to actually fill in logic and code in here to create our controller. But before we do that, let's create the underlying logic, which will check if the person that's using our app is a new user that needs to see the welcome flow, or if they are an existing user. So we're going to go to our pre-existing view controller in here, and we're going to create a class. Down here, we're going to call it core, and this is going to be statically accessed. So we're going to have a static let shared in here, which is equivalent to a core. And we're going to create a function, and we're going to call it isNewUser. And we're going to call another function, or create another function, and say set is not new user. We want to call this function after the welcome flow has been dismissed so we don't show it again. And what we're going to do in this is we're going to return a bool. So let's actually update this here. We're going to return UserDefaults dot standard defaults dot bool for key is new user. And if they, by default, this is going to return false because we haven't set anything. So we're going to return the inverse of this. So the first time the app launches, it's going to say, hey, is this person a new user? This is going to return false. We're going to inverse it with the exclamation mark so it'll be true. And once this function is called, we're going to say user defaults standard set bool set, where's our bool? Set bool true for is new user. And we're going to call this once the person has dismissed the welcome flow so we don't show it again. So this is the underlying logic for this. Let's come up here and create a new method, which is actually going to be an override of viewDidLayout subviews. We're going to call super viewDidLayout, and we're going to say if core.shared is new user, show onboarding, like so. Next, let's go to our main.storyboard, and in here we're going to actually drag out a view controller, set its class, and That's how we're going to reference it to actually present it. So let's grab a new view controller from in here, bring it on in, have it selected, and in the identity inspector, we need to set its class. So let's come up here and set it to WelcomeViewController. And we need to set its storyboard identifier. So we're going to set it to welcome. Let's also go to our WelcomeViewController and create an outlet for a holder view. So we're going to say IB outlet var holder view is a UI view. Let's head back to our storyboard. And in here, let's drag a view in and connect that outlet. So the reason we're adding this view is we're going to actually put a scroll view that scrolls horizontally into it, and we want to make sure that we stay within the constraints of the screen, and this holder view is where that scroll view will go. So let's add some constraints, 0 all around, and I believe we're done in the storyboard. So let's go back to our standard view controller that the template gave us. And in here, what we want to do is we want to say welcome view controller. Rather, we want to say let VC equals storyboard, instantiate storyboard with an identifier, welcome as welcome view controller, and we want to present this controller. We're going to say present VC, animated is true. Something important to also do here is say vc.modal presentation style equals full screen. I'll actually demo what the difference between having this and not having it is. But basically, if you don't include this in the newer versions of iOS, the user can swipe down your welcome flow and basically circumvent the entire onboarding experience, which nobody wants the user to be able to do. So let's set a background color in the welcome flow and run this app and actually see that it's being presented. So let's come in here and just say the background color is red. Hit Command R after you select your simulator. And let's see this in action. So once this welcome flow shows, we now need to do the actual meat of it, which is showing the horizontal scrolling screens as they look like, which has an image, a title, and a button. And then we also need to handle the dismissal of this view controller. So if we give this a second, it'll compile. And there it goes. So by default, the app launches, and we should see a red screen pop up, which we do, but we have this white view on top of it. So it looks like it's in the background, but it's in fact not. But let's get rid of this red and let's actually create the horizontal onboarding experience. So I like to create another function called configure, which will actually set up the scroll view. And I call this function in ViewDidLayout subviews, so we know that the constraints for the holder view that we added have been added and configured. So in here, we need to we need to add a scroll view, which is going to be a UI scroll view. And whoops, let's come back down here. We're going to add a frame. It's going to be a CG rect. Let's actually make it simpler. The frame is going to be the same as the holder view dot bounds, and we're going to say holder view add subview scroll view. Now we want to add 3 screens because we have the 3 images: the Apple logo, the map pin, and the check mark. And we want to add a title, image, and a button to each screen. So we're going to use a for loop. And then after that, we want to make sure we set the scroll view's content inset. So let's do for x in 0 up to 4. So 0, 1, 2. This should be 3 actually. And in here, let's say a page view is a UI view with a frame. And this is important to know. When you calculate this, we want to move it over in the x coordinate every time. And I'll show you what that looks like. So y is 0. The width is going to be holderView.width or holderView.frame.size.width. Same thing for the height. Make sure you change that to height. And the x is going to be x, which is what we're getting in our for loop. If we come back and look over here for x in, we're going to do x multiplied by the width of the screen. And this is actually complaining because this x is an integer, so we need to actually wrap this in a CG float so we can actually calculate. The next thing we want to do is we want to add this as a scroll view. And then now let's work on the title, image, and button. So the title is going to be a label with a frame. Let's create it with a rect. Say 10, 10. The width of the screen. So let's say pageview.frame.size.width minus 20. Let's say height is 120. Let's copy and paste this twice rather, for our image view and our button. Make sure we change this as well as this. Now we need to update the frame of each of these. The button is going to be at the bottom of the screen. So we're going to say pageview.frame.size.height minus 60. The button height is going to be 50 with a 10-point buffer. The width is fine, and the height, let's change to 50. So the image view is going to also need some updating in the frame. So we're going to say the x is 10, which is fine. The y is going to be the label height plus 10. So we know the label height we've set up here is 120. So we're going to say 120 plus the y, which is 10, plus 10 more. The width is going to also be the same. The page view width divided or subtracting 20. And the height is a little trickier for this. So let's actually expand this a little bit. So the height of this is going to be the entire height of the page, subtracting the height of the button and its buffer, which is 60, and also subtracting the height of the label, which is 120, and its 10-point buffer, which is 130, and then subtracting 15 for the sake of having a little room between the elements. So we're getting warnings here because we've created these variables, but we're not using them yet, so we'll configure them in just a bit. So now let's work on the label first. So we're going to say label, text alignment is center. We're going to say labels font equals UI font with a name. And we'll give this a nice bold font, which will be Helvetica Bold 32. We should also add it to the page. And we should definitely give it some text. So we're going to create a titles array. And we're going to use this X to get the title for that page. So let's say the first title is welcome. The next one is location. And last one is all set. So that'll be the label. Then we want to configure the image view. Let's see, did we spell image view incorrectly? We did not, so let's copy and paste it. The content mode is going to be aspect fit. The next thing we're going to do is image view.image itself is going to be UI image with a name. And the name is going to be welcome underscore. And then we're going to append an X because that's what we called all the images in our asset file. And let's see, we need to now add this to our page. Lastly, we want to configure the button. So for the button, we want to actually add a function that gets called when we tap it. So we're going to say button add target self. Action we'll do in a second. And we're going to say this is for touch up inside. We also want to set a background color and a title color for this. So we're going to say button dot set title color. It'll be white, normal, background color. If we can find the correct one. That's not what we want. Because it's background color this way. Background color is, let's go with black. Now, also, we want to set the title of the button to continue. But for the last pages button, we want to actually say get started on the button. So we're going to say if x equals 2. Now remember, x is where the variable in our for loop, so we're going to go 0, 1, 2. We're going to say, not title color, we want title. We're going to say set title to get started. Let's come down here and create a function for what happens when this button gets pressed. So we're going to say func did tap button. And we're going to pass the button in here. So now in here we can say did tap button. Make sure you prefix this at objc for Objective-C. Now we want to add this to our page. Now let's actually run it to see what we get. Hopefully we have no errors. Then we'll work on that button at the bottom. So we get our screen that pops up, but we don't have our images, and looks like we can't scroll this. And tapping the button, nothing happens. So let's see what we botched and why we can't get that image, or why we can't scroll. So the reason we can't scroll is because we need to set a content size, and we can just do it via this way. Content size is the CG size, and it takes a width and a height. The width is going to be the holder view dot frame dot size dot width multiplied by 3. Height is going to be 0. We're also going to say scroll view paging true, and we want this button to do something. So what we want this button to do is, if you click the first or the second button, we want it to take you to the next screen. And if you click the last button, we want it to dismiss the whole onboarding flow. So we need to get a number, basically, which button is actually being tapped. So we're going to set a tag to the button. It'll be x plus 1. So we're going to get 1, 2, 3. And we're going to say in here, guard button.tag is less than 3. We're going to dismiss if it's not. And here we want to scroll to next page. So to actually scroll in the scroll view, we need to make the scroll view public. So let's actually come in here and let's say this is a public constant. Let's create this as a UI scroll view. And instead of assigning it here, we can say the scroll view's frame equals this. Now down here, because we can access the scroll view now, we can say scroll view dot set content offset, and we want to offset to a CG point, which is an X and Y. The Y we don't care about, and the X we want it to be the holder view dot frame dot size dot width multiplied by the tag as a CG float. Hopefully my math is correct on that. And animator we want true. So let's actually hit Command R to build and run and see what we get. Looks like we have an error in here. Let's see. Set content offset, holder view frame size width, CG float. Let's spell this correctly and hit Command R. And we'll see that we should be able to hit this and scroll to the next screen. So look at that. And it looks like our numbering is incorrect, which is why this first image is not popping up. So we're doing welcome_x. So we want to actually do x plus 1 because x is going to start at 0. Let's try it one more time. Cool. So we get that, hit the button, next screen, hit the button, next screen, hit this, nothing happens. So what we want to do to wrap this up is in here, we first want to set that the user is not a new user anymore. So set is not new user. And then we want to dismiss the current view controller with an animation and nil for the completion handler. So let's hit run one more time. And let's hit next, continue, get started. Let's open the app again by hitting Command R, and we should not get that welcome screen again, which we don't. So there you have it. That's how you create a simple onboarding flow, which is pretty important to have in a app these days to showcase what the features are, what you can do with it, so on and so forth. So basically, just to review, we created this view controller with a bit of setup code, which will create that label, image, and the button. We set up our storyboard with another view controller, this inner holder view with an outlet connected to it. We remembered to give this view controller a storyboard ID as well as the class. In addition to that, in this view controller, we created this class down here, which we're using statically with two functions to set if it's not a new user anymore and to check if the user is new. In the ViewDid layout, we're actually doing that check through the core class, and if the user is new, we show the WelcomeViewController. Now the last thing I'll mention is you don't have to put this check in the ViewDid layout subview. You could also do it in view will appear. That's totally cool too. It's a little bit of preference and lifecycle choices, but for the sake of this video, I just threw it into here, which is where I usually put it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't done so already, smash that like button below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe if you're new for daily Swift tutorials, and I'll catch you in the next one.